What's up, everyone? This is Mayan Gordon, owner of Mayan Gordon Media and co-founder of Champion Empire. We are back today, live at 5, streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and to Facebook. I hope you guys have had a really, really wonderful weekend so far. And if you haven't, I would really appreciate if you took the time to comment one thing that you're grateful for today. Post that in the comments. Let's try and fill up the feed with some positivity, some gratitude. No matter what's going on in our lives, there's always at least one thing to be grateful for. So today I have a very special guest. His name is Jeff Thompson. I met Jeff, guess it or not, through LinkedIn, pretty much like how I've met every single guest on this show so far. And Jeff's a great guy. He's got a really great story. And he's actually the person who was able to hook me up with my amazing virtual assistant who I've been talking about. Her name's Rhea. So Jeff, could you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself to people, really just under the context of who are you at your core as a person? Like, what are you all about?
What am I all about? That's an interesting question because I am almost 50 years old and I don't think I have yet figured out what I'm all about. That's
a great answer. And I love that because you're the first person who said that, I think, on my entire show so far. And you guys, you don't have to have it all figured out. I don't think any of us really get to the point where we have it all figured out on who we are. And that's kind of the beauty of life, is it's a continual journey of self-discovery. No matter how much you think you know, there's always more to grow and always more to figure out about your own self. So go ahead, keep on
well,
telling.
I mean, that's a perfect point that you made, because I still haven't figured out what I want to do when I grow up, basically. I am a writer. I have 4 books published. They're not exactly setting the world on fire, but that's one of my passions, is writing. And I write mystery, gothic stories, macabre, those kind of things.
So fiction, the fun stuff.
Yep, absolutely, fiction. I've tried to do some. I'm no good at article writing. Blog writing I can do. I do blog writing, but article writing is a whole. I tried to do some some article writing, and it didn't work out. So I just stick with the blog writing mostly. However, fiction writing, short stories, novels, that kind of thing. I'd like to do. I do sculptures. I'm pretty much an artist at heart. Very creative mind. Which makes it difficult for me to stay organized.
Yes. Yes, that is the struggle as a creative person. In fact, I think before we hopped on, I was just talking to you about that. I was like, I'm going to take the next 2 weeks with Rhea, and we're going to try and organize some of the chaos that I've created. Because when you keep coming up with new ideas, especially I'm sure in writing, it's hard to like corral all of them together.
Oh, I zigzag everywhere, all over the place. You're in the middle of working on one plot or one scene, and I'm thinking about 17 others, and then I go take a shower and think about 3 more, and I lay down and go to sleep, and there's another one, and I forget them all by the time I sit down, to do some writing. So it's a crazy life being artistic, as you probably know, and having that creative mind and having those artistic abilities, because it's like when you're an artist, it's the only time you feel like you're doing the right thing is when you're creating, is when you're doing that, and it's like even when I'm working for Telework PH and I know that this is what I need to do, there's still a little voice in the back of me that's like, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing right now. You should be writing. You should be creating something. So
that constant urge. Yeah,
exactly. So luckily my job allows, as does with yours, allows for a lot of creativity. So it scratches that itch. So, I mean, basically that's what, if somebody asks me, what I'm all about, I like to say that I'm an artist.
Awesome. That's a great answer. So kind of where I like to go from here is take us back, where do you come from? Where did you grow up? What was, do you come from a large family, a small family? What were those early formative years of Jeff like?
Okay, so my early years, I was born in Akron, Ohio, the Rubber City. And Akron, Ohio at the time was pretty run down. It's built up now. It's really, really nice. And it's, let
me interject real quick. What size of a city is Akron? Is it like super small, 10,000 or less, 100,000 people? Is it a big city? I've never been. So I actually am just asking for myself.
Yeah, it's not a New York or a Boston or a California, but it's not a small city. It's I believe it's the fourth largest city in or the fifth largest city in the state of Ohio after
Okay.
Cleveland, Columbus. You know what I mean? So I would say it's not a thriving metropolis. However, it's pretty good size when you add in all the suburbs and everything else. But I mean, Akron proper is pretty small. Um, but it's expanded out. So I mean,
Yep.
it's home. You know, it's not there's plenty of available room, but there's also plenty to do, plenty to go. You know, going on. Um, so and a lot of people are from Akron, Ohio. You know, LeBron James and Hugh Downs actually. A lot of people that I won't even go into the history of Akron, Ohio, but it's it was the rubber capital of the world. It's where Goodyear and BF Goodrich and Firestone all had their factories. I'm sorry, I couldn't think. That's where they had their factories back in the 20s and 30s and the 40s. They've since moved out. So back then it was really really a booming place. But I grew up there in just a regular blue collar neighborhood. Me, dad, mom, two sisters. Just regular childhood, Catholic school, all the way to 12th grade. University of Akron after that. So um, just normal.
What did you think of kind of university of college? Was it something you really really enjoyed? Was it kind of just something you coasted through? Also, what degree or what area did you focus in terms of your academic studies?
College.
Yep.
I hated it.
Hated it?
Oh, I
What did
hated
you
every
hate
bit of
about
it.
it? What did you hate about it?
I was done with school. I guess when I graduated high school, I just wasn't at that time, um, and into education, into becoming educated. I wanted to party. I wanted to have fun.
You were
It's just,
young. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. So I wasn't thinking ahead. I didn't have that mindset when I was that age. A lot of people do.
Yep.
I didn't. I was a late bloomer. Um, so when I started into college, I wanted to go and be a lawyer. So I took all the prerequisites for pre-law and all of this stuff. And 2 years later, I came out with an associate's degree in culinary arts. I became a chef.
Oh, very cool. That's quite a hard
Yeah.
turn. How did that happen? Did you already have a love of cooking, or was it something you discovered in college?
Well, I had a love of food. I'll tell you that much.
Who doesn't?
And yeah, and you know, it was always interesting to cook, but it was never anything that I actually ever did. But I got a job in a restaurant, actually in a nice restaurant, a fine dining restaurant. As I started my career in restaurants when I was 15 as a busboy, and so I'd always been in the restaurant business. And well, when I was going to college, I was working at this place called Tavern in the Square, which is actually in the building. It's no longer there, but it was in the building where Ferdinand Schumacher started Quaker Oats.
Oh, cool. Lots
Yeah,
of history, it sounds like.
yep. And so Chef Steve Bro and I would always bug him and ask him and talk to him about stuff, and I became interested in it. Um, and then I got fired from there for being late too many times, and so I got a job at a country club, working in the pantry making salads. And then talking to the chef there, I just decided one day I would go down and switch my major, um, and it just went from there. I didn't go and get the full 4-year degree because my plan was to go through a different program for CCA, Club Corp of America, and actually get my colors, which is on your collar. They call it you're getting your colors, and become like a full-fledged chef. But I didn't do it because I was young and I wanted to party and have a good time, and so it wasn't a priority. Let's put it that way.
No, I can totally relate to that. When I was 19 and 20 in college, like I didn't think even till next year. Oftentimes, it was really a very now focused time in my life. Very little planning ahead because 30 still seems forever ways away. Those
Oh
are
yeah.
like old people when you're 19 or 20. Feel like young and alive and away from home for the first time. So what kind of happened after you finished that 2-year culinary degree? Did you work for a period in different restaurants? What took you on your next kind of path?
Well, I bounced around basically. I worked for the carnival for a while, making elephant ears.
Oh
Like I
my
said,
God,
yeah,
no.
I really wasn't serious about life back then. Um, and you know, the culinary arts degree was a way to get jobs. And I finally did get a little more serious about it and gained some positions. Um, and worked my way up, fell backwards into a lot of jobs. And I bounced around. I lived in Cincinnati, in Kentucky, South Carolina, lived in Myrtle Beach for 3 years, and just, basically cooked wherever I could cook and take my skills there. Um, Thereabouts. I had a really good job in Fort Thomas, Kentucky at Highland Heights Country Club, but unfortunately I got fired for being drunk. So, and
Interesting. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about that because I know a little bit about your story, but for people who don't know, how did you kind of get into drinking? And then how long, tell us about your story and use of, alcohol, essentially.
well, it's funny because I didn't drink in high school. A lot of, even when I went to parties, I didn't. I was afraid of it for some reason, and I don't know if it was because of when you're in high school, they bring in that state trooper, and
Yep.
everybody assembles in the gym, and he's like, talking to you like right here. I'm going to talk to you about alcohol and drugs, So, all through high school, I was afraid to drink. You know, 'cause, the drugs are bad.
Right.
Alcohol's
Yep.
bad. Mr. Mackey for your South Park fans. But what's really funny is I remember my first drink, and I must have been. I know that I was 10 years old, and it was New Year's
Wow.
Eve, and yeah, I was 10 years old, New Year's Eve, and we were at. I was with my parents, of course, and we were at their friend's house, and they gave me a little. I mean, it's like church wine, just a
Yep.
little
Oh,
thing
yeah,
of church wine.
absolutely.
But I remember that feeling that I got, and I wanted more,
Hmm.
I could to this I remember it like it was yesterday. Now I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday, actually,
Right.
but I remember that
That
drink, and
memory got like really burned into your brain.
pretty much every drink gets until you. I mean, in the I am an alcoholic. I am a real alcoholic, and I'll explain what that means later. However, so um, I had been given drinks here and there. Now, my Aunt Mary's wedding, I was 12 years old. I got blasted. Ooh, boy, did I get drunk. I mean, I got drunk to where my dad was holding my head and throwing. Now, we're talking about this is the early 80s, man. It was a different time. You know what I mean? For a kid to get drunk, with his
No
parents
big
there,
deal. Yep.
it wasn't, nowadays they'll be in jail, they'll get arrested. But we're at a wedding, and I probably did like 2 shots and a beer,
Yeah.
and I was plastered, and I was crying and everything. It was,
That emotional drunk. Yep.
yeah, I had, you know, and I didn't touch alcohol again until later on in life, until after I graduated high school, and I started hanging out with some friends that I worked with. I worked at I don't even know if they're around anymore. It was called Old Country Buffet. I think they changed
Yep.
to Home Style Buffet or whatever.
Yep.
So I worked there, and it would be like after work, everybody would, finally somebody put a beer in my hand, and I drank it, and the love affair just began then. Um, and then at that time, this was 1990. Yeah, this was 1990, 1991. The Akron U bars were 18 and over. You could get in if you were 18,
Gotcha.
and they would put
Yeah.
a big black X on your hand so you couldn't drink, but then you just go to the bathroom and wash it off. And,
Yep.
So I would go to the same bar every night, and it got to the point where they knew me. They would just wave me in. They didn't,
Right.
they never checked my ID after a certain amount of time. And I'll never forget my 21st birthday. And I'm sitting at the bar, and I had my buddy Jerry with me, and we were celebrating my birthday. And the bartender Barb, the owner of the bar, this old lady, she was great. It's college bar. She was just amazing. And she came over, and I'm like, hey Barb, her name was Barb. I say, Barb, it's my birthday, and she's, I'll give you a beer. she's like, so how old are you now? 24, 25? And Jerry, my buddy Jerry, I had been drinking in there for years,
Yeah.
and he's like, he's 21. And she's like, Jeff, I'll kill you. So, that became my normal. Moving on to that time in my life, that those early years when I was in college and going towards that culinary degree, I worked at the country club, and I just remember, for the entire summer, I had this routine, and my routine would be I would get off work at 10 o'clock, I would hit the drive-through, and I would get a 6-pack of Milwaukee's Best Ice and a pack of cigarettes. And I would go home and drink that 6-pack and then go out. Because the 6-pack was
your pregame. That was
right.
Like the warm-up. Gotcha.
Exactly. So, that 6-pack was only $1.89. You know what I mean? But a beer at the
what
bar.
It is for one beer now. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's how it was. They had these things called blue cups. And it was like, I don't know, like half a gallon of beer. I don't know. And it was like, those were $2. And they were $2 for as long as I can remember. So that became my norm. And I did that like every night. And the only night that I didn't go out was Saturday night, because I had to work the buffet, the Sunday brunch buffet in the morning. And it was frat boy night. So it was really not a lot of fun. So at that time, and we're talking when I am 21, 22, I still had a little bit of control. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. Okay. It's something that, builds up over time. And to me, I thought the way I drank was normal. And even my friends, and my girlfriend at the time, who were, I would consider heavy drinkers, they would call me an alcoholic because I would drink alcoholically. And what that means is I would start and I just don't stop.
Yep.
And I'm slamming, I drink a 6-pack and then go out.
Yeah.
And still function. Yeah, and it began to progress, from there. I was already at that young age beginning to ruin relationships. Alcohol became, and in my mind and in my mindset, I thought, hey, I'm young. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Everybody's drinking. Like everybody's drinking.
Right. You completely normalized it to yourself.
Right. And they're saying, my friends would tell me, yeah, but nobody drinks like you, Jeff. You drink every day, Like you drink every day. Like, no, we don't, because, and then I began to realize that I'm the only one Monday night sitting at the bar. I'm sitting there by myself getting hammered.
Yeah.
Where's everybody else? Well, they'll be here, they're there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it just never registered with me, and so moving forward in time, because that's basically how my life went. Every night was a party. Every night was Friday night. And I would drink every night except Saturday. Saturday night, I would sit at home and listen to the Grateful Dead or the Doors and literally not drink and get in. So I would say, you see, I didn't drink Saturday night. But, as I say, alcoholism is a progressive disease. So it does progress to that point where things began to get out of control. However, I'm what they call a functioning alcoholic, or I was for many years a functioning alcoholic. And what that means is I could stand here and talk to you and be completely blasted, and you would never know. I
wouldn't be able to tell. Yeah.
Unless you could smell it. But you know what? Right. Hall's cough drops work wonders. And I had so many lies as time was progressing. I had like this big bag of my blood sugar's low. There were just so many things that I was able to cook up. I was so creative,
What were you creating? Like, what were these words to? Like you not drinking or like being places? What were they regarding, so to speak?
Well, mainly it would be like going into work, and they would say, "Well, you smell like alcohol. You've been drinking already today. It's only 2:00 in the hour. You've been drinking already today." I tell them, No, I think my blood sugar is low. I'm hypoglycemic,
Gotcha.
or I would come up with, man, well, I got hammered last night, and it's just I'm hungover, and
Right.
those kind of things. Where in reality, I had a water bottle full of gin.
Gotcha. So you
Yeah.
started bringing alcohol into work with you. Is that correct?
Well, let's back up a minute.
Okay.
Because it's the defining moment for every alcoholic's life is that morning drink, the first time you take that morning drink. And I'll never forget that first morning drink, because my life up until then was drinking all night, and I was still young and I was in shape, and so I could drink all night. I could drink till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and get 2, 3 hours of sleep, get up, take a shower, drink a cup of coffee, feel like a new man.
Oh my God, I could never do that. That's a skill set for sure. That's amazing.
But it got to the point where I started getting hangovers, and they were
I know about those, yes.
Yeah, where you wake up and at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're making that vow, I am never going to drink again, ever. I swear to God, but by 4 o'clock, you got a beer in your hand.
Yep.
So I remember I woke up, and this is when I was living in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and I woke up from a night of heavy, and I'm talking like Jim Beam. Jim Beam became my choice of drink. Jim Beam ginger ale. When the ginger ale ran out, it was just straight from the bottle.
Yep.
Jim Beam. And I was actually dating this girl named Sarah at the time, who was just as heavy drinker as I, alcoholic. Unfortunately, I've heard from some people that she's still active, which is unfortunate. But however, I woke up, and I mean, I was feeling sick. I was bad. I was in bad shape, and I had to work in like an hour. And I'm like, there is no way I could go in, So I'm doing that thing where I'm walking around, and I'm thinking, man, I got to call off. I can't call off today. Right. We got a huge party coming in. They need me. What am I going to do? And so the term "hair of the dog" jumped in my head, and I remembered that there was some wine coolers. I always had alcohol. There was some wine coolers, and some why I had wine coolers, I don't know, because those are weak,
and they're kind of
gross. So I thought, hey, it's still the 90s, you know what I mean? So I grabbed a wine cooler, and I chugged it down. I felt a little bit better. I'm like, yeah, this is all right. So I drank another one. Then I drank a beer, and I'm getting ready, and all of a sudden, I've drank like 4 wine coolers and a couple of beers, and I wasn't drunk. I was normal.
Wow. Yeah. Did that register to you, or did you just were you focused on like, hey, I feel better, now I can go to work?
It scared me. It scared me because I was getting to that point that I knew I was an alcoholic. However, did I want to admit it? No. Did I want to accept it? No. But it scared me because I knew that I'd crossed the line.
Yep.
And I used to make a joke about it to myself that I either got to quit drinking altogether or just stay drunk all the time, because there was no in between.
Right.
About 2 months after that, I lost that job. That was at the country club, and I'd gone in, and I was hammered. And I walked into the club president or the director's office, and he's like, "Hey, Sheffy, what's up? Just normal." And I said, "I am drunk."
You were drunk enough to tell him you were drunk, yeah.
His face just red, ears red, and he's like, "You got to get off the property right now. Don't talk to anybody. Just get off the property." So I left the property. He called me. He's like, "Come back in. We'll talk." I came back in, and they gave me a week suspension and get cleaned up.
Yep.
And that was the first of a long line of suspensions and getting fired. But this was my first one. Right. And get cleaned up, come back sober, and there's going to be some repercussions. But
Right. But you can.
So I did.
They gave you a chance at least to try and make it better.
Right. And so I did. I came back in a week, and I I had a meeting with my staff and I told them how I made this mistake. And that's the first time it passed through my lips. I'm an alcoholic. And everybody's like, well, you need to get help. You need to get help. And I played it. I played it out. I had no intention of getting help. I did not believe I was an alcoholic. I was paying lip service.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. But, I hung my head, I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
And that again became an excuse later on. But at any rate, about a week after that, I did the same thing again. And they're just like, you're gone. Get your knives, get your jacket, just get out of here. I was defeated. So I did this thing where I would end up back at my mom's house, living in the basement or whatever.
Yep.
And my mom, she's a saint and she always welcomed me back, but it was always like, she didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
And I put her through hell. Oh my God. I would call her drunk and cuss her out. And I would steal from her. I don't even want to talk. I would start fights with her. And I said the most vile things you should never say to a mother, ever. And she always forgave me. There was a time though, that I was not allowed at her house.
Right.
For about a year, I was not allowed. And that was towards the end of, that's right before I started getting help. But, so as time progressed, I moved back home. I got and I would get jobs, and I would get these good jobs. And as long as I stayed sober, I would excel, and I would get into management positions. And as soon as I would get comfortable, boom, my mind would start to lie to me. And it would say, hey, you know what? You can go out and have a couple of beers. It ain't going to kill you.
Gotcha.
You can stop.
Yeah.
You can have a couple of beers. And you wake up in the morning, you'll be hungover. You can deal with it. You've dealt with it before. And it never worked out. Now, am I talking too much?
No, this is great. No, your story is amazing. And Scott, I think you're taking us down, the journey. All I'm wondering is how did you make, clearly you started to get some help at some point. What allowed you to be able to make that decision? Because I think a lot of people reach the point of realization, but they for some reason can't come to the action that allows them to then change their path. So I'd love for you to maybe share your thoughts around why that happens with some people, maybe why that, your path was different, what allowed you to be able to make that change in direction towards actually getting help from kind of lying to yourself all the time and saying, it's going to be okay. I got this. I'm not going to fall back into this pattern. What allowed you to kind of break free from that?
I'm glad you stopped me, because it was just going to be a story of the same thing over and over again. Getting jobs, getting up there and losing the job, getting fired and embarrassing myself. And I had actually gotten a really bad reputation. We have where I live, there's a strip of restaurants, and where at one point they all wanted me to work there. And at, another point in time, they didn't even want me to walk in the door.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I got my first DUI, and now I still watch the cop shows and everything else, and people are getting their first DUI, they're crying and everything. And I was like that. I was really upset. And to be honest with you, the first DUI is not a big deal. Anybody who's out there, and as long as you're not super drunk where you're falling. And I had been at a picnic. I had a couple of beers, literally, and I was asked to go get some chips. And so I hopped in the car. I went. I got stopped it was a Memorial Day, and I got stopped at a checkpoint.
Gotcha. Yep.
I got a DUI. I thought my life was over, and it wasn't. But that hit me hard. Okay, so that hit me hard. So now I'm getting DUIs. Great. So in the state of Ohio, your first DUI, you get 30 days in jail, but they suspended 27 and sent me to this 3-day thing in a hotel where I had to go through all these classes. And when they did my assessment, they told me that you're not an alcoholic. I'm like, I just had so I was happy that they told me I wasn't an alcoholic, because I lied to them. you know.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, three DUIs. After my second DUI, and I love to tell this story, I was at home and I was drinking, and I fell asleep on the couch. And when I woke up, on the TV was Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it was one of his speeches, one of his things about changing your life and changing, the way you think and everything else. Yep. And I'm like, who's this bald guy on TV talking about this bullshit? And I was too lazy to get up and change it. And 2 days later, now I had belonged to this book club that I had never had any intention of paying for. His book came in the mail. And I thought, well, that's just weird. So I began that's what started me on the whole journey, you know what I mean? And I knew about AA, and I had, began to dabble in Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that. Now I'm not a big AA guy, but I do like the big book, which is, the main text of AA. I don't like meetings. That was the biggest thing. So moving forward, I got some help. I didn't get some help. I went to AA. I would go to a few meetings. This is boring. I would stay sober for a while. And I bounced around for a long time, until after my third DUI. So when I got my third DUI, that was bad. That was really bad. I have lost my license in the state of Ohio forever. Okay. If I should happen to get caught drinking,
your driver's license, like you can't drive in Ohio. Period.
It's revoked, absolutely revoked, gone. And this is the deal that I had to agree to not get a felony. Okay, because my blood alcohol level was 0.304.
Oh wow, super high.
Yeah, the judge was like, "How are you even walking around?" And I'm like, "What did I say? I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm an alcoholic." That became my mantra. That became my excuse. So anyway, that was really, really bad. And even then. And I hope my mom isn't watching this, because this is something she doesn't know. When I went to court, I was drunk. When I went to court and got sentenced, I had my water bottle full of vodka. So even then, the point is, everybody has their own, what they call rock bottom.
Right.
The point that they're going to hit. Mine was when I got evicted from my apartment. I lost my job at McDonald's because I was drunk. And I had a bag of nickels to my name with nothing coming in.
Yeah.
But there was a store down the street that let me run credit. So I had gone in the morning and I had bought 2 bottles of vodka, 90 proof vodka. I came home and I drank those 2 bottles, and now it's 3:00 in the afternoon. And I'm not drunk. I couldn't even light a buzz. 2 bottles of 90 proof vodka.
Wow.
So I called the guy and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, can I run a tab?" He's like, I'll give you $20 more. That's cool. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I started walking down there and I got like half the way there. And I was passing a bus stop where there's a bench. And I'm like, you know what? This is insane. This is absolutely effing insane. And I sat down on that bus and I'm just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. So I turned around and I went back to my house and I called AA. And I talked to the guy, Bruce, for a good 45 minutes. And by this time, the buzz started creeping up on me. So now I'm drunk. 2 guys came over to my house. They brought me a little bit of food, took me to a meeting, and that started my journey on getting sober. Did I stay sober after that? I didn't. No. But my sobriety was lasting longer. I was learning. I was learning about AA, and I was learning about what I needed to do to get sober. And I thought it was all bullshit. But I think I was doing it more for appearances. And like I said, every time I got drunk, the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. And I used that as the biggest excuse. I mean, if I got caught drinking or drunk, say, "Hey, man, I'm an alcoholic. It's what we do. I'm so weak. Please forgive me, boo hoo hoo." And people bought it. for a while. And then it was just that's when I got to the point where I had no friends, I had no family. To this day, my father still does not talk to me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, he only did what he knew what to do at the time,
Right.
and it's just I was angry about it for a long time, but then when I stop and I think about it, I'm like, it is what it is, and I'm not angry, or I don't blame him anymore, and I wish him the best. But anyway, I began to seek out real help, and I don't know why, but I just got tired of it. Fast forward, I moved to the Philippines and sober, but I
So
still was.
let's pause there. Tell us, because that's a pretty big shift and change in life. What like where did that idea come from? I'm going to move to the Philippines and I'm going to do it sober. Did it just like kind of pop into your head one day? Was it influenced? Did someone talk to you about the Philippines? How did you even become aware of this idea?
I knew at the time, and this is a lot of alcoholics do this, is they want to move, they want to get away,
Kind of like moving away, like moving to a new place escapes the problem, so to speak.
Exactly. And my mom, she would warn me about this. She's like, you're just trying to escape yourself. You can't run away from yourself. And I'm like, no, I want to go, and I want to, experience. So I was thinking Mexico. I was thinking, Czechoslovakia. I was looking into Canada, even, and all of these countries. And for some reason, the Philippines just kept popping up. And I met a guy online in an AA group chat, and we began talking, and he lived in the Philippines. So, long story short, we made a bunch of plans, to do this farm and everything else, and packed up, moved here, met my wife, married her. We moved down there, and it didn't work out. It was a scam. Now at this point,
I'm sorry. That's definitely rough, especially when you have kind of a lot of your, like, I imagine a lot of your hopes tied to this idea at the time. Was that for you? Was it really hard? Was it kind of like obviously something that hurt, but how kind of hard did it hit you?
Super hard. I got drunk. That was, going back to my rock bottom, that's where I didn't want to be, was homeless.
Right.
Okay. That was the step when I knew I was losing my apartment, that I had to get help. So here I am back in that situation where all my money's gone. Every bit of boom, Yeah. And here I am in a foreign country, no way of getting home.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to anyway. My wife was pregnant at the time. I'm not going to abandon her.
Right.
But I did anyway, because I went and got drunk. And I stayed that way for a month. Now, when I say I got drunk, old Jeffy here doesn't just get drunk one night. I'll start and I won't stop for a month.
Yeah, just like night, morning, middle of the day, continuous drinking.
Middle of the night, I wake up, drink, go back to sleep. Wake up, drink, throw up, drink. I mean, it's not pretty. I don't shower. I don't take care of myself. I don't do anything. And that's how I live my life. Believe it or not. So at any rate, we'll go ahead and skip forward. So moving, I kept bouncing back here when I was here in the Philippines for that first 5 years. First year, until after my son was born, and my son was 8 months old, and I was drunk, and we have these little stores here called sorry stores that are just like in somebody's house, or just like, and I had run up credit in all of them, and I had borrowed money from everybody to get bottles of gin, and I was on a pretty good month-long bender.
Yeah.
And I paused, because this is like the pivotal moment. That was my suspense. I had just finished a bottle of gin, and I was going outside of the house to house. It was a bamboo shack, to get enough to go in and borrow, put on credit, another bottle of gin.
Yep.
And as I'm walking out the door, I'm going to say this, but I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I'm not saying God talked to me. I'll never say that because I don't know what it was, but I heard this voice, and it wasn't a voice like you're talking to me, but it was like around me, inside of me, and it just said, "That's enough. That's enough."
I mean, it was. If I had to speculate, I think it was your own mind, a piece of your mind that probably hadn't been speaking to you. Finally, had broken through, and you were finally hearing it. Because I think that our a lot of those things that people hear, those experiences we have, where all of a sudden we hear a voice, I really believe that oftentimes comes from inside, from a part of our brain or our soul or our heart, whatever you want to call it, that has been trying to speak to us for a long time. But because of the circumstances, because of everything else going on in our lives, oftentimes we don't hear it. Kind of the same way you can be in any situation and literally not hear certain things that are happening. Our brain has this amazing ability to tune out noise, right? To make things that are sometimes even very, very loud into a white noise that we don't even notice. So that's my interpretation of it.
Well, the mind of an alcoholic is very noisy. It really is. The lies that go on and the excuses and the poor me and I'm a victim of the world and everything else. All of that it's very noisy, and it's hard to cut through all of that. And at that moment, everything cut through, and it just said, "That's enough." And that was September 18th, 2011, and I haven't had a drink since.
Wow, that's amazing. What was it like? What did you have kind of physical withdrawal effects from drinking so much and just stopping cold turkey? Tell us a little bit about that. And how did you, was it like, what kept you from going back at that point? Like, was it that voice that kept talking to you, or did you just have some type of resolve that you never had before? What allowed you to finally, like, essentially quit drinking?
I don't know. I mean, I can be completely,
yeah.
I mean, I was no stranger to detox. I've been in the detox unit more times than you could count. I mean, I looked at my card one time and it was filled up on one side. They flipped it over and started. That's how many times I've been to detox. Now, this last time, I don't know. When I went out to the store, instead of getting gin, I bought coffee.
So you just changed your habits.
Basically, yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to say that I traded one for the other. I may have. However, I knew what I was in for. I knew what it was going to take, that it was going to be hour by hour, that I was going to sweat, that I was going to be able to sleep, that I was going to shake, my legs are going to shake, that it's a horrible, and you go through all this emotional turmoil and it hurts. Detoxing from alcohol, it can actually kill you.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It hurts bad. And it's 3, 4, 5, 6 days of that. But after that, I just didn't want it anymore. And I haven't wanted it. Now, for the first 2 years, I'm not going to say I had cravings, but it was the thing about alcoholism is we spend so much of our lives drunk that becomes our normal. That's how we live our lives. So we don't know how to live sober. And so for the first 2 years, that there was I had to learn how to sleep. I had to learn how to fall asleep. And even now I struggle with it because every night, for so long, I would just pass out. You would just
pass out. Yeah. No, and it's very easy to pass out compared to actually going to sleep. That I can totally understand how that would be a difficult thing to learn. And especially, I imagine those were probably, again, you would know, this is more a guess, but I imagine that was one of the harder times to not drink, was when you wanted to fall asleep because you knew that it would accomplish that goal of getting you to sleep.
There's a lot of times, like toothaches. Toothaches is a perfect excuse to, down a couple of shots of gin or bourbon or whatever, you know what I mean? Because it dulls the pain. Having a cold, it's a great time for a hot toddy, Now there are times that even at 9 years sober, almost 9 years sober, in a month,
congratulations. Exactly. That's awesome.
That I still, in stressful times, it crosses my mind that I would love to just be able to grab a bottle of gin, put on some music and just relax, just chill out. But then I remind myself, you know what? No, because
Not worth it.
you can't. You
Yeah.
know, I had to tell myself and remind myself a lot of times that, you know, I've used up that privilege. I can't, you know, and we all know, you know, and that's getting back now, going back to that first step. And I'm saying this for anybody who's out there that might be watching this or knows somebody that's watching this, and they can replay it, because this is vital. And this was vital for me to stay sober, was that first step of Alcoholics Anonymous that says we admitted we are powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. But I rewrote that for myself. We admitted and accepted, because I admitted it every day, but I never accepted it. I never really made that decision inside and accepted the fact that this is who I am, that I cannot drink responsibly, no matter how hard I try. You know, the body of the alcoholic, it's different than addiction. Addictions are acquired. The body of the alcoholic, we're born this way. It's like an allergy. Like some people can eat strawberries and others break out in
like
hives.
A reaction to the alcohol, where
right.
I think, you know, it's a great example of how you shared you being able to remember your first drink when you were
Mm-hmm.
10, and compared to me. So I also grew up in a family where the kids were given wine as part of like Friday night ceremony. I grew up Jewish, you know, everyone gets a little kiddush cup. And I have no recollection of kind of my early drinking days, because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like how it tasted. I would have a little bit, but I don't even remember. And, you know, alcohol for me is something that I don't really struggle with in any capacity, because
Mm-hmm.
my body does, like, it almost doesn't want alcohol. Like, I can handle a very small amount, but honestly, if I have more than 2 drinks ever, I'll probably puke. That's like my body's reaction to it. And so I don't have that same immediate sense of craving to do it all the time, because my body goes, it's probably going to make us not feel so great. Like, maybe have 1 drink, but like also maybe don't. And so I think that's something really important for people to understand who have never dealt with alcoholism before, is it's not just someone losing control because they don't have the discipline. It's really like a reaction in your body
Mm-hmm.
that happens. It's something chemical that from the first sip of that alcohol, it's affecting an alcoholic very differently than it would be affecting you if you're not an alcoholic. And I think that, you know, we should all have a lot of compassion for that. The same way we'd have, like, the allergies was a great example. The same way when someone has allergies and they're going, achoo, achoo, and it might be annoying to you, and you might want to yell at them and say, stop sneezing so much. It's much better to have compassion and to try and, you know, help them come up with solutions to their allergies. Maybe they need to take, you know, some nasal spray, or maybe there's some, you know, type of help that can help them control those allergies. And a similar thing is true. You know, alcoholics, they need support, they need help, they need really systems, I would say, that allow them to deal with alcoholism in a way that it's not taking over their life the same way, right? Allergies could take over your life and kind of completely control you from going out to places, make you want to stay home all the time. And so it's just really good, the more we can be aware of how other people's lives might be different in any capacity, but especially people who, let's say, suffer from a disease that they did not ask for. No one asks to be alcoholic.
Right.
No one asks for alcoholism. It's not something that, like, anyone would wish upon themselves. And so it's just really, I think, a good time to bring up that we can all be compassionate, even if things are affecting us negatively. That person is probably suffering in a much greater capacity than any amount of negative effect that we're experiencing from it.
Well, I think that's one of the things is when people look at alcoholics or even drug addicts, because I'll throw them in there too, because, you know, they think, well, they're enjoying life. They're always drunk. It's miserable. It's it's hell. And that's what people don't understand is, you know, 1 drinks, you know, too much, and 100's not enough. You know, when I was active, I couldn't find a free drink to save my life. You know, when you start getting the shakes and you're going into the DTs nowadays, I mean, people offer me drinks all the time. If I have this much, if I have a sip, it's craving beyond control. It's not like just having 1 potato chip and, you know, you can eventually put the bag away. You'll step over your dead mother to get a drink. and it
Yeah.
consumes you. And it's like, normal people, they could have a couple of drinks and they're like, oh, I feel it, I'm going to stop. For us, we're just getting started.
Yeah. There is no stopping once it started.
Exactly. And it's, and there's really nothing you can do. The one thing I learned through AA and meeting other alcoholics and trying to pass the message is you can't help people that don't want to be helped. And that was what I was talking about with my whole life was, as much as I was drinking and as much as I knew on the surface where I didn't want help. So nobody could help me.
Right.
As much as they yelled at me and put me down and called me names, it just put me into that shame cycle. And I'm not blaming them because I did some horrible, I treated people very poorly. And I admit that now, and I can look back on that now and forgive myself and ask other people's forgiveness, and they're just like, yeah, you were a real jerk back then. And we laugh about it. It's a different time. So if anybody that is suffering and they're looking at that, it will heal. All of that goes away. My mother and I right now are best friends.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed at her house for over a year. I mean, I was literally, if I would call, she would hang up on me.
Yeah.
And now,
I think that's a great thing to bring up is really the fact that, like, forgiving yourself is probably one of the most important pieces to getting past something, because that shame is never going to help you want to stop drinking. Like, shame is definitely, I think, one of the worst things that we as human beings can feel, shame and guilt, because they don't help us to make better behaviors. They actually almost encourage us to make those negative behaviors and choices again. And the fact of the truth is that you will always be more judgmental of yourself than anyone else will ever be of you. Our own ability to criticize ourselves in our own thoughts and to let our inner voice speak negatively to us, talk down to our own selves, is such a greater capacity than the outside voices that we hear. And so when you can really practice, stripping away some of that negative voice inside of your own head, it creates all this freedom and space for you to start hearing positive things. You can only ever really hear so much at one time within your own head where you're actually listening to it. I think that was a great point where you brought up the mind of an alcoholic is very busy. And because of that, it's very hard for you to hear anything in a way where it impacts you. And I think that's part of why, alcoholics stay so much in the same routine. Like, they really get into a routine from what I've seen. And they have an amazing ability to just stay within that routine for years and years and years, because there's nothing really that's hitting home in a way where they can focus on that one singular voice. And the more that you can strip away some of those negative voices, the more you'll see that, and this has been my experience as a non-alcoholic, but someone who's struggled with insecurity, struggled with, negative thoughts about my own self, is the more you can strip those away, the more like your actual real voice about who you are comes through, about what things you like, about what things really make you special, about what things that you really love about yourself. So I'd love for you to take us kind of, over the next, from 2011 to now 2020. I know your life's changed in a lot of really great ways. Why don't you tell us a bit about, the progress that you've made, kind of some of the accomplishments that you've had since then?
I've written 4 books. That's one of the biggest accomplishments. All my life, I wanted to be a writer, and I would talk about it, but it was, I could never do it because I was always drunk. This romantic idea of writers and alcohol, I don't know where that ever came from, because I'm useless when I'm drinking. I can't do anything. You know what I mean? Much less write a book. I can wake up now and not worry if I'm getting fired from my job. If I'm sick and I want to take a day off and rest, there's nobody talking. Oh, he's just hungover. Oh, he's just off on a bender. It's wow, get better, take medicine. Those kind of things. I get to watch my children grow up.
That's beautiful. No, I mean, that's great. Yeah.
Which is amazing,
Yeah. How old are your kids now?
5 and 9.
5 and 9. Oh, that's awesome. They must be doing and saying all sorts of cute things these days.
They drive me crazy. But I can provide for them. whereas before I couldn't even provide for myself. So these changes that have come about have really just done, you know, so much. I mean, I know we're running out of time, but the thing is when you're an alcoholic, you get so used to being disliked, you get so used to being wrong. Even if you're right, you're wrong because nobody
Right.
trusts
They don't
you.
trust you. Yeah.
You know, and you know, I don't have when I go to have a conversation with somebody, I don't have to worry about my breath.
Yep.
That may sound stupid, but it is you know, it's one of those things that
Sounds like
you
a
know.
huge weight has been really lifted off of your life from getting clean from alcohol. That there used to be that life used to come with a lot of stress and worries and kind of constant being under pressure.
It's hell, and I'm telling you, it's complete and utter hell. Now, you know, now when I get sick, or you know, I'm not feeling well, I know that it's because I got a bug or because I need to drink some orange juice, not because I'm hungover. You know, I don't know how many times I probably had a cold or the flu, and I never knew it. You know, because
Yeah.
I was always drunk or
You
hungover.
always felt bad.
So you know, I am like 100% more productive now. I'm more creative. Um, like I said, you know, creative people, there's that big romantic idea that they got to be drunk all the time, or you know, do this because Ernest Hemingway used to drink. Well, he killed himself. You know,
Yeah.
alcohol is a depressant, and that's another thing is I still get in my funks, and I still get into my depressive moods. But when I was drinking, I tried to commit suicide. You know, I took 3 bottles of Tylenol PM one night.
Well,
Uh,
we're all really glad that you're still here, but that's a great thing to bring up because it's not something we talk about very much at all in our society. Unfortunately, right now, I think the suicide rates have gone up quite a bit due to COVID and people being stuck
absolutely.
at home, not having outlets for their creativity or their energy, and kind of realizing that they can go to the liquor store anytime now, and just grab some alcohol and come home and drink. And there's an excuse now of, well, lost my job from COVID, so what else am I going to be doing? And I think that if anyone is struggling with alcohol out there, that the message from this whole really live interview is get someone to support you. That it really starts with inside, making the realization that you want to change. But once you do want that change, find people who are going to help promote that positive inner voice inside your head that allows you to make progress, that doesn't make you feel shamed and guilted when you do make mistakes, but that people who are really there to support you.
There is, and it's people that you don't even know. You could. I'll never forget, and maybe we'll wrap it up with this because this was an amazing quote. I met a guy and I don't think he's going to mind me saying his name, but his name was Justin P. Chase, and I'll never forget that. His name is Justin P. Chase, alcoholic, and he was a real alcoholic. And he tell the story that when he quit drinking, he always, when you're sitting in a bar, you're like, when I get some money, I'm going to go do this and do this. He did all those things. Yep. He went snorkeling in Australia, So when he quit drinking, he did all these things, and he got a college degree, and he bought 2 houses, and he was homeless living under the bridge. That's the power of quitting drinking. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer says, it's like the high jumper has to get down really low in order to jump really high, and I feel that I'm on my way. But the point is, if anybody's out there and they're struggling, or what Justin P. Chase said to me that day, that first meeting that I walked into, he said, "You don't have to live that life anymore. You just don't have to." My life's great now. I eat what I want. I'm not sick all the time. Like I said, I have no, when it comes to like those kind of little things, my worries are grown up stuff. Yep. I worry about my bills. I worry about my children. I worry about the real things that matter. Not, did he smell my breath? Are they talking about me? Am I going to lose my job? Where am I going to get my next bottle? I don't have any money because I would get a paycheck and it would be gone in 2 days. Yeah. And I know now what people do. When I first got sober, I didn't know what people did.
Yeah.
I didn't know that people went to movies and went to dinner and didn't drink. To me, my
so
reality,
really kind of enjoying life in a different way than you'd ever enjoyed it before.
There's so much, There's so, I look at Netflix now, and I get on Netflix and I'm like, this movie came out in 1997. How come I never saw it? Because I was
You're
drunk all
catching
the
up
time.
from a lot of movies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there is help. If anybody wants to talk ever, you can reach out to me. You can, get me on Facebook. You can get me on LinkedIn. Anywhere you can ask my on or any.
Yep.
If anybody wants to
You
talk,
guys can always reach out to me. I can hook you. I connect people with Jeff in the messages all the time on LinkedIn. So definitely shoot me a message. Shoot Jeff a message through LinkedIn. Are you on Facebook? If people wanted to find you on Facebook,
you can search BizDev Jeff or Jeff Thompson. You'll mine says Jeffrey M. Thompson Jr. Writer.
nice.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I don't even want to talk about my TikTok because I'm not as successful as you are. But there's LinkedIn is the best place to get me. Facebook. I always have those two open all the time, and I don't preach, but I do listen. And I could give you some advice, and I'm just going to tell you that you are exactly where you need to be right now. And if you just want to talk, if you think that you have a problem, because not everybody has a problem, and I will tell you this, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but not everybody is a real alcoholic. Some people just drink alcoholically. Some people are just heavy drinkers. So you have to decide for yourself, and you'll know if you're an alcoholic, and if you want to talk about it, hit me up and we can hop in a call or we can just chat. It doesn't matter. And I am amazing at finding AA meetings in your area all over the country. I don't know how I do. I'm just able to find meetings for people. Yeah, so that's
amazing. Well, I think that's incredibly gracious of you to offer. And I really encourage, even if you're just curious, Jeff's a great guy to talk to, you guys. He's a great friend. Feel free to hit him up if you're just looking to make some more friends or have some more positive, supportive people in your life. Because I think Bonnie said it great. Having supportive, positive people around you can sometimes make all the difference in the world. And Jeff is definitely one of those types of people. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Please feel free to share this on your social networks, whether that's Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can either grab the link from the three little dots or the share button underneath, or you can message me if you have trouble and you just want me to shoot you over the URL. I can definitely hook you guys up. Really appreciate you guys. We will be back tomorrow night with another LinkedIn Live at 5, Facebook Live at 5, YouTube Live at 5, wherever it is that you're watching. And I hope you guys have a really great rest of your night.